Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really striking text called The Standards of Perfect Human Nature. It's this fascinating framework by So Feng that tries to answer one of the oldest questions in the book. How on earth do we deal with intense, unbearable suffering? Instead of throwing modern psychology at you, this source offers a deeply spiritual, almost ancient perspective. It suggests that our perception of adversity might literally be the key to transcending it altogether.
Here's a quick look at our agenda for today. First, perfect human nature. Second, navigating life's twists. Third, coping with ultimate loss. Fourth, surviving false accusations. Fifth, facing fatal illness. And finally, the spiritual mindset shift. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. Perfect Human Nature, Reaching Supreme Life Space.
So, to really grasp how to handle suffering, we first need to look at the text's utopian concept of perfect human nature. It claims this state is an absolute prerequisite for entering what it calls a supreme life space and putting an end to endless cycles of war. The text lays out 8 specific conditions for humanity to get there. We're talking about revering the greatest creator, gods, and Buddha, having absolutely zero desire to win, lose, or combat, being completely modest and trustworthy, and deeply conforming to nature's laws. But take a look at the 6th condition highlighted here. Out of all these grand, sweeping moral imperatives, this one is surprisingly personal and practical.
Section 2. Navigating Life's Twists, the 6th condition.
And that brings us right to the core of this explainer, the mandate to adjust and stay completely calm, no matter if times are good or bad. I mean, the ability to maintain absolute emotional equilibrium is literally a condition of perfect human nature here. The source uses this incredible visceral metaphor to describe the dangerous, isolated journey of exploring the truth of the universe. It paints this vivid picture of a rugged path where you literally hear the howls of wolves, the roars of tigers, and the hiss of snakes. And notice the heavy emphasis on isolation. The text explicitly warns that on this journey there are no peers, no companions. You walk alone, facing the misunderstanding of crowds and your own relatives alike. It's a stark reminder that, according to this framework, pursuing the truth isn't some comfortable group activity. It's a solitary, perilous expedition where your mind can easily become exhausted.
So how do you survive this journey? Well, the framework insists on a super strict dichotomy in how we process our circumstances. During good times, it says you must avoid arrogance entirely. You have to attribute every single benefit to the blessing of the Creator. Basically, stay thankful so you aren't eaten alive by pride. But on the flip side, when facing bad times, the text demands something radical. You have to internalize all disadvantages as the fault of your own words and deeds, as a literal punishment for yourself. The whole goal here is to completely eradicate the instinct to hate society, hate others, or hate heaven. By taking total, absolute ownership of the bad, you retain the calm state of mind that's necessary to actually turn the situation around.
Section 3. Coping with Ultimate Loss, the First Trial.
Now, let's look at our first extreme trial. And wow, the framework really doesn't shy away from the darkest corners of human experience here. It acknowledges the profound, crushing loneliness and desperation caused by what it calls the greatest misfortune, the bereavement of a father in early youth, a wife in prime life, or a son when aged. To cope with this agonizing loss, the author introduces a powerful paradox, arguing that suffering is actually a necessary enlightenment tool. It boldly claims that misfortune is literally the best catalyst to attaining a deeper level understanding of human life. So, instead of underestimating your own capabilities when you're overwhelmed with grief, the framework asks you to just accept it naturally. The whole idea is that this profound distress is actually accelerating your journey on the road leading to a super time space.
It's honestly fascinating to see how the source synthesizes the teachings of major world religions to back up its point here. First, it pulls directly from Buddha Sakyamuni, suggesting that suffering offsets the evils of a previous life. Then, it places that right next to the words of Jesus Christ from the Gospel of Matthew. Blessed are the poor in spirit, blessed are those who mourn. The text just seamlessly blends these massive traditions together to argue that severe earthly pain is absolutely not a cosmic mistake. Rather, it's a deliberate divine prerequisite for entering a high-level space.
Drawing directly on Lao Tzu, the text visually balances these opposites to prove that extreme hardship is really just the universe preparing you for ultimate glory. Check out the symmetry in this concept. If you are to be exalted to power, you must first be laid low. The text argues that if the Creator wants to offer you eternal life, you must first be placed in conditions of poverty, hardship, and torture. Because otherwise, the text warns, humans just become arrogant, selfish, and completely impossible to reason with. Think of it this way. The suffering is the medicine that cures human arrogance.
Section 4. Surviving false accusations. The second trial.
The second major adversity we explore is being completely framed without any ability to vindicate yourself. Interestingly, the text describes this specific psychological pain as being worse than being openly hacked by a knife or chopped by an axe. It identifies this inner anguish as a primary cause of human despair. And you might be wondering, how on earth does one avoid collapsing under such burning injustice? When conventional thinking tells us to fight back, complain, call for redress, and demand our names be cleared, how does a follower of this philosophy survive without letting hostility towards society completely destroy their mind?
Well, the text's solution is a radical mental retreat. It explicitly commands the reader to temporarily just give up on concepts of life, death, honor, and disgrace. You abandon your complaints. You leave the judgment of right and wrong entirely to God and the assessment of your merits to the Tao. You literally isolate your mind as if you were stranded on a deserted island, looking out at the world with cold detachment across the sea. By quietly waiting for the spring blossoms instead of fighting a rigged system, you transform this massive adversity into a turning point to explore the true essence of life.
Section 5. Facing fatal illness, the final trial. And this brings us to the ultimate test. Facing a fatal illness in absolute poverty. This is the exact scenario where the abstract philosophy meets the harsh reality of flesh and blood. Imagine you're sick, your time is running out, and you simply do not have the money to save yourself. The framework poses this question directly, asking how the poor should react when they cannot afford modern medicine. It's actually incredibly empathetic to the burden this places on relatives, noting that family members are the ones who will feel the real sadness and who still have a long way to subsist in the world. So what do? Does the sick person desperately drain the family's meager resources just to buy a little more time?
The text answer is a firm no, by pointing out that even wealthy, powerful emperors completely failed to cheat death. The text advises the poor not to waste their family's precious resources on futile cures, and it points to specific historical evidence for this. Look at Emperor Qin Shi Huang. He sent 3,000 youths looking for an elixir of life, and they just vanished. Or Emperor Li Shimin, who ate a panacea crafted by a famous Taoist and, well, still died. The text basically argues if these mighty rulers with endless wealth couldn't escape mortality, why on earth should poverty-stricken commoners waste their hard-earned frugal savings trying to do the exact same thing?
Now, impartially analyzing what might be the text's most striking claim, we see the argument that an early death is actually advantageous for spiritual progression. The source constructs this hierarchy of life where the real happy life is never being born into this world at all. Failing that, dying immediately after birth or in childhood is framed as preferable simply because a longer life in this world inevitably means accumulating more sin. The text claims the worst possible fate is living to 80 confused and puzzled. It is a stunning reframing of mortality. It literally turns an early, fatal illness from a tragedy into an extraordinary spiritual opportunity.
Section 6. The spiritual mindset shift. Transcending death.
This philosophical reframing of death brings us directly to the text's ultimate resolution for human suffering. It asks the reader to fundamentally reject the idea that the death of the physical body is something to be terrified of. The overarching goal here is to stop obsessing over the physical body and focus entirely on constructing this eternal spiritual entity. The text argues that the absolute only thing we should truly fear is our spiritual entity moving toward a lower bound after the flesh dies. Therefore, as time runs out in the physical world, every single ounce of mental energy must be diverted away from bodily survival. It all needs to be poured entirely into building up this spiritual life, ensuring it moves to a better space.
So how do we actually do this? The source outlines a very specific procedure to transcend life and death. First, you absolutely must accept your physical mortality. Second, the text introduces the concept of entering Lifechanyuan, which it presents as the simplest, most effective way to build up your spiritual entity. Third, you take the road of super time-space. The text promises that by doing this, you directly reach eternity. And fascinatingly, it even claims that making this profound mental shift might cause your fatal illness to spontaneously disappear. The idea is that your physical body could rejuvenate simply because you stopped desperately clinging to it.
Let's leave you with the text's ultimate realization of enlightenment. The author suggests that if you can seize this opportunity, if you can find a brand new situation within a desperate life, you might suddenly become enlightened and literally laugh out loud at the cosmic irony of it all. Ha ha ha, so that is what it is. As we wrap up this explainer, it leaves us with a profound question to ponder. How much does our perception of adversity, whether it's loss, injustice, or illness, ultimately shape the reality we experience? Does fighting the darkness only make it darker, or is true freedom found in calmly accepting the storm? Thank you so much for exploring this fascinating text with us today.